Welcome, traders. So this is Sunday, the 17th of September. I'm recording this for Monday, the 18th, and the week commencing. Looking at the economic calendar, there is quite a bit happening throughout the week. It's a busy, jam-packed week. However, I believe most of the attention is going to be focused on the US dollars FOMC showing up on Wednesday night UK time between 7 and 7:30 p.m. So there'll be some big swings, a lot of volatility around that period, followed by what I'll be looking for or watching, keeping an eye on, will be Thursdays in the UK, the monetary policy summary and the official bank rate votes, as well as that possibility of a rate hike of 25 basis points. Okay, so that's really what I'm going to be keeping an eye out. That's where I expect most of the volatility to be. That being said, let's go ahead and move to the charts. Having a quick look at the VIX. VIX is still sitting at all-time lows. And again, just to give you some context, let's go all the way back. You can see all the way back to 2005, 1993. It regularly sits at these lows. It's really when it starts to spike up above, let's say, 40, that it is usually an alarming situation. We don't really have that at the moment. Okay, so just highlighting that, we're looking as though we're reacting off that bottom. Let's have a look at the dollar index. So the dollar index enjoyed 9 consecutive weeks. That has not happened for a very, very long time. 9 consecutive weeks where it closed higher. However, interesting to see that ultimately it closed below that 105 level, so back below that, and that's, I would say, is relatively significant. It certainly is coming due for a bit of a correction. We've got a little bit of divergence heading up here, so we might find that this 105 level is going to hold the coming week and potentially get a bit of a correction down, possibly even as far as 104. I would say if we break these lows at 104.39, then we're likely to trigger a weekly retracement, which actually means we could head even further down, possibly as far as 103, back in towards these old highs here. Let's have a look at euro dollar. Excuse me. This is a relatively decent trend to the downside. You can see it is attempting to hold at that 106.30 level. Same thing again, it's had nine consecutive weeks to the downside. That is almost a bit of a unicorn type of event. So what does it mean? Well, we've got a stronger dollar. It doesn't necessarily mean it's just going to continue ad infinitum. What it's more likely saying in terms of probability is that we are likely going to have a retracement soon. All right, sooner rather than later, so I'll be looking out for that. Possibly we could have a bit of a double bottom form here and then see a bit of a correction. So that, for me, is the most likely one, looking to see if there's any kind of a retracement back up into these highs around 107. Still looking for continuations, but just look at it, for example, on the monthly time frame, you can see that we've definitely started to break below this uptrend to the upside, and this is now starting to turn over, or at least, at the very least, we're hitting a range. So those are the most likely outcomes in the scenarios, that this becomes a range, starts working its way up and down, and so we start heading up from where we are now, or we start to break below that, heading down towards 1.05, which shows that we're potentially resuming a trend to the downside in the medium term, or certainly between now and December, which means we could see that US dollar continue to strengthen. Okay, so interesting, keeping an eye on that. Sterling as well, very solid, healthy downtrend at this point in time. We can see we're almost approaching these previous lows here on the weekly. So let's just go ahead and stick that in here. We'll do it about there. Actually, I think I'm happy with that over here. Boom. So we'll just leave that level there at 1023. And that looks as though we've got a continuation on that side as well. And this uptrend, on a monthly is still intact, but it did battle with that 50-period moving average. Again, we could see that continue to head to the downside. So aside from the normal retracements that might occur during the week, I'm expecting these to continue to head low, which hints so far at a potentially stronger US dollar. Then we've got the Australian dollar against the US dollar, which currently is just ping-ponging between these levels. Its behavior is much more range-bound than anything, and I would expect that if it does break through this level at the 06, call it 06.350, or just failing to get above that 0640 level, we could see a continuation lower. So again, it is sitting at level support. I want to see what happens with that. We've got Kiwi dollar against the US dollar, similar type of thing. Look at this break below and just battling to get above that 05925 level, and looks as though it wants to continue down. So a lot of these majors are hinting at a continuation for the US dollar. Looking at dollar yen here, the biggest challenge for it is this 147.72 level. We just trying to break past that. That weekly does not look overextended. We've actually been going sideways for the last 3 weeks. We're not that overextended on the monthly, and I would just add in this level here. So 148.70 is really going to be the big challenge. So this week, again, I think the probabilities lie. The price action looks more aggressive here. It looks like it really wants to push through and hit that level. And then we will see how it reacts. That Makes sense. It kind of aligns with the FOMC calendar. So that indicates there's a possibility Monday is going to continue these trends, and then we'll see what happens Tuesday or Wednesday, whether they reverse or not. Dollar Sussy here looking pretty much content. Starting to become overextended on the daily. Looks fine on the weekly. Looks really fine on the monthly. It also looks like it has good room to head up towards 0.9. So most of that, my expectation is, again, aside from any potential retracements, I expect this momentum to continue to the upside. So all of that, again, hinting at uh, probabilities of a possibility at least of starting out with a 10th week of dollar strength, which is very, very unusual. But we live in unusual times. Okay, we live in unusual times as the market is adjusting. We very much, COVID is kind of starting to rise again, and new strains are starting to come back, so we haven't shaken that off at all. We've still got Russia invading Ukraine, but it looks like they're getting their asses kicked, so this is really interesting because that changes the whole global dynamic. A lot of other countries are now starting to align themselves with the US. The US economy is thriving. There's some other interesting things, bond yields are inverted and a few other things, a couple of bubbles popping here and there, property, housing bubbles, secondhand car dealership or secondhand car sales are starting to kind of pop. Their car sales are starting to pop a bit. So really interesting, and I do think it's interesting. Overall, they're not necessarily signs of an apocalypse to come. If anything is a sign of an apocalypse to come, it's the weather. It's not the economic stuff. So interesting to me to see a lot of countries are kind of adjusting themselves, and then you've got, say, for example, I think, and this is just bear with me, I might have this wrong out of memory, but I think like Norway, one of the Northern European countries has kind of had is like technically in a recession. So there's a whole lot of really interesting things going. A lot of people, inflation is still potentially a bit of an issue. People are earning better, but quality of life is a little bit better. Sort of post-COVID, people are working from home 2-3 days a week, but we also at the same time have these corporate profits. We have strikes happening because companies are declaring massive profits, but saying they can't afford to pay their workers anymore. So we've got massive social seismic shifts happening. We're living in absolutely the most interesting times in history. And I believe that a lot of it, should we come out the other side of it, if we make those adjustments where they need to be, then things will improve dramatically for most people. And until we fight those, or until the people who are obstructing those, until they're overcome, those are the kind of things we have. So anyway, there's just so much going on. The world is a bit crazy right now. Dollar CAD as well, potentially finding some support here. This could be the beginning of a head and shoulders pattern. That would be interesting to me. You could see that we've definitely created a bit of a retracement on that weekly within that uptrend. We're battling here on the monthly. We're struggling with that resistance level. So there's a lot of possibilities here and potential likelihood that we might see a move up, but then we might see it form a right shoulder and then start to work its way down. I've just sort of penciled this in, so we'll see how it goes. If it does happen to do that from here, then we'll see how that ultimately turns out. Okay, let's move on to crude oils. So crude oils, okay, gold had a really, really nice comeback this week. It's definitely broken that downward trend line on the daily. So the downtrend on the daily is done. However, there's certainly a little bit of a resistance level that is sticking in here at 1925. Call it 1925. We'll see if we continue up through that. I expect that we are likely to. We've got a potential higher low here. Not a very strong finish on the weekly candle, but a break above the high of that. If it can get through that 1940 level, we're likely to see it potentially start to work higher. And otherwise, on the monthly, it just continues to look as though it's range bound within the monthly because we've got 4 candles in a row. But this area that I highlighted in green, this was done a while ago, a couple of months ago, where it did appear to me as though we could turn in this area because of the moving averages and an area of 1900, nice round number. So this week what I'm looking for with gold is ideally to see it break through here and finish up near the highs, but this level has to be broken first. Okay, look at silver. Silver in comparison, nice little swing low here. It's broken these highs here, so it's battling. It still has to get past that $23 level. That not looking super strong, but it's staying above the 50-period moving average. It's wedged between the 10 and 20 and the 50, so it's got to work its way out of that. So a little bit of a wedge forming with silver, and the monthly just looks like a mess. The monthly looks very weak. You've got some buyers coming in here. So you've got buyers below 22.75, but you don't have any above that. Okay, so big battle happening there. So it makes it very choppy. Gold is the one of my favorite at this time, but I keep an eye on both of them anyway. Let's move along and have a look at natural gas. Natural gas battling with this level as well. Also looks as though that's going to ping pong and move a little bit lower. Okay, so expecting that to fall lower. Let's have a look at crude oil. So crude oil's certainly becoming overextended on the weekly. A little bit pushing towards that. I would say if we head up towards $96, then we're definitely overextended on the monthly. Daily is sort of taking off. I would look to see a retracement on the daily soon. Will it happen this week? It's a fair possibility to see that happen this week. So I'd keep an eye out on that one as well. Looking for pullbacks on West Texas, Brent crude as well. Same thing again. You can see it's clearly broken through this downward trend line. There's no reason why I would expect it to stay there. It's broken the monthly downtrend. We are solidly in a weekly uptrend. So the only question is, when are we going to get our weekly retracements? And if we surge, it could actually do its surge up towards 90. Again, you can see up towards these old highs at 97 up to $100 here on Brent crude, and then expecting that to do any kind of a pullback would be good. So I'd be looking for a pullback this week. Let's see, but I certainly would stick with the direction of that. So any kind of pullbacks I would see as buying opportunities. Okay, on to the main event. So looking at the global indices. So last week I spoke about how sort of the bears had come back in control. We really actually had a good week recovering back from that, and then got knocked back by Friday on the Dow. So we could see, if you look at it here, we're in a mess at the moment. Could we see the FOMC break that? Possibly we could see that. On the monthly, we're still looking more bullish than bearish. Why do I say that? We are producing similar highs but higher lows. Okay, so this is a great area for price to produce a bullish candle in the coming week. Let's see if that is ultimately the case. S&P as well, also very nice week recovering, and then got knocked all the way back down. Okay, so this week is going to be one of those. I don't want to use the term make or break, means that that's massively significant in the longer term, but it is important to see if we ultimately have a correction lower or not, or if we recover from this. Again, you can see same thing with NASDAQ. Not a bad week, but then knocked right back on the Friday, changed the game. So we could still be in line for a bit of a weekly retracement on that. Sorry, I beg your pardon, a monthly retracement on that. We'll see, and it would potentially even stay within the higher. It could still be a higher low on this. So just, I will definitely be keeping an eye on that. And the Russell here, really testing support, actually so much so that I'd like to just kind of mark that level there to see what happens with it. Not looking super strong, so just back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Then we have the FTSE, which had a phenomenal week. Now here's the thing, I would take this seriously, because if one of the weaker indices, one of the ones that's most choppy, and again we had this actually happen earlier in the year, we had non-US indices remain bullish, which is very, very rare, and it shouldn't happen if the US indices are bearish. We had them remaining bullish against the bearish US index, and therefore actually that hinted at clues that maybe the US index was that the US indices, I beg your pardon, were just struggling a bit. This hints at the fact that the US markets are more likely to recover in the coming weeks than they are to go further down. Okay, they're more likely to do that because we're having this. We'll see how the German DAX is. We'll see how that's going. We've broken the high, so we've got a nice little weekly uptrend here, or at least we're at the very top, attempting to break out of a range. This is a double bottom. I spoke about this before. We didn't have bullish divergence here, which would add a huge amount of near certainty to a double bottom and a reversal. Looks really good. That monthly looks super good. We're heading back up to those highs. This looks very, very good so far. So that's very optimistic. I look at the DAX. The DAX has bounced back up from these lows off this level of support. You can see lots of buyers coming in here. You can see lots of buyers here, but not enough above this area. And the monthly also lots of buyers below the lows. So this is not as optimistic as the UK, but certainly is not pessimistic either. I quite like that. The ASX in Australia also experiencing a really nice strong week. So the US did until the Friday, and everything else non-US appears so far to be very bullish. Look at the Nikkei wanting to take off again. You can see that trend starting to change on the weekly. Really nice turnaround. We'll see if it ends up being anything else, but I quite like the look of this. So non-US indices very bullish, which implies that the probabilities are very high that the US markets are going to recover. Not guaranteed, but certainly greater than 50%. In other words, it's more likely that the US markets are just holding back for the time being and then will take off. Cool. So it's likely to be a little bit depressing running through these individual ones here. Apple coming back down to a level of support. I want to see if it turns around. I'm only going to mark this out of interest. Okay, just to mark that candle for interest sake to see if that ends up being a bit of a level of support and if it climbs back up from here. It's definitely in the right place from a monthly perspective. Price action wise, yeah, it could come down to 165. Either level is still acceptable to produce a higher low. Okay, so I'm very happy with where that is. Not a problem for it to turn up from here. Amazon is rock solid. It's just slow and steady, and therefore could likely break up. Battling, obviously, with this 144 level, which it's battled with in the past, which is why it's been marked here. We'll see if that's going to be the case, but this also could be forming a bit of a wedge and then break up. So whether I say a wedge or a pennant or a ascending triangle, it doesn't matter. Okay. Doesn't really matter at this point, is that it's an upward pressure. It's forming a bit of a triangular shape and is likely to break out from that. Again, I really like the look of this. So this is AT&T. This is trying to turn around. Just doesn't pick up much momentum, but it looks more bullish than bearish. It has the potential at the very least to work its way up to 16 or even up towards 1662, back into those major levels. Glencore also looking good. I'm very happy with that. It's still range bound, so the potential for it to move up to the top of the range is there. Let's have a look at Tesco's. Tesco also very nice. That was also very nice. So that also looking nice and bullish. But these are UK stocks, so it kind of doesn't surprise us. Amex also looking for nice support there. All of these look like possible hints at being a little bit of a bullish foundation that's setting up there. Broken the daily downtrend, so now we're on to a weekly retracement. So we'll see what happens there. Berkshire Hathaway. Overall, just another week ticking up. Any kind of a correction down here, I think, would be fantastic. A monthly correction down to 340 would be amazing, or up to 350. Any of that would actually be great. But otherwise, it's bullish, looking good. And you know, if it's Berkshire Hathaway, surely that has to be a good indicator of the U.S. economy. Berkshire Hathaway has to be. I mean, it is almost its own index. That's how reliable it is. We've got this range-bound behavior. We're testing the lows of this range at this point in time. Will we recover from that? We're going to have to see. So that's Coca-Cola. BP breaking up to the upside here and battling with that area, so that doesn't mean anything just yet. ExxonMobil also back up at its highs, so all of this makes sense. We're probably more likely to break out of that, because my expectations for now, other than retracements, is to see crude oil heading higher. General Motors forming a little bit of a base here, so this could be a bit of an accumulation phase within the range. All of that makes sense. Will we see a breakup? We'll have to keep an eye on that one. JP Morgan Chase. So let's just go back to this and use it as an example. So should we in the next week break down to the downside and close below that, and we see that on quite a few charts, yeah, then we're likely to see a bit of a deeper correction on the indices. But if we break up and we finish higher from this point on, all green, then that's a much more likely indication that that bull trend is intact. This is great. Look at this in terms of in isolation. If I just showed you this and I didn't tell you what it was, it is in itself a bullish setup. Okay, that is a nice bullish structure as it is currently. All right, cool. Obviously, it's incomplete. We've still got, we're just past halfway through the month, so that can change shape. Also here, a bit of a break below and a push higher on Adidas, trying to stay up and above in that level. Just trying to stay there. So I'm going to keep that as intact. Still lots of buyers pushing in. Meta struggling over here. Meta's just had an insane run. Meta really could do with a correction to the downside. So I'm not surprised that it's finding exhaustion here, because it's been ridiculous. This to me is institutional behavior, just institutional buying. It's so ridiculously consistent that there's no way retail traders form those kinds of patterns. Morgan Stanley also looking very nice and bullish. I like that. I like the look of that. That looks nice. That's decent. Nvidia, so Nvidia's a tricky one. We're battling here. We've definitely got bearish divergence. We're in the zone. We're at a round number. We've tapped 500. A lot of this to me hints that we could see a further correction to the downside. So I'm kind of going to put it on the table that I say there's a fair possibility we could see this drop down to 400 this coming week, potentially, or close to 400. And if it closes this month with a bearish red candle and we break the low of it, we're then likely to see it move into these old highs around that 336 level. Okay, and it needs it. It's not a problem. Doesn't mean Nvidia has lost its way. It represents a buying opportunity once we get a turnaround there. So that could be something that we only see around about November or December this year. Okay, Netflix also just wanted to come down to these levels. It's a downtrend, but this is a good area for it to turn around, which is why the green box is there. PayPal. Also, I want to see if this is going to turn around from here. So far, broken that downward trend line. We'll see. Why did I mark that? That's a bit of a weird one. We broke through. We breached through it there. Okay, we'll see. We'll see. Let's go back to that and let me just, is that PayPal? And just remove this for now. Okay, just move that along. Leave that as is. Spotify. Spotify's in a better state. Look at this. This is beautiful. Beautiful break and a retest. Look at that. Looks very nice. That looks pretty decent. Okay, Spotify expect to try and push higher. The spider, not looking good, but it is range bound. So hitting low is not a problem until it finds a base at that range. If it breaks out the range, then we're in a different place, but it's in a range, guys. So going up and down a range has to be attributed to the range until you break out of the range. You have to assume it's going to find a base at that range. Better sort of innocent until proven guilty. Oh, I marked that because I was wondering if that was going to be the turnaround point, but we have pulled back. We've continued to pull back. And we kind of potentially, let's just mark that and move that over there. Will we find that to be the bottom? Nice retracement here. Could it come down a little bit further into these highs? Yeah, it could. Again, if some of the others decide to do bigger retracements, this might be one of those ones that does it. Tesla continues to look relatively bullish, continues to look as though it's going to break outside of this. We'll see. I'm going to just wait and see until it does. Vanguard. Also, again, Vanguard is one of those ones similar to what we've seen in a few of the others above. This could do with a deeper retracement, deeper correction down to 400. But if it carries on up from here, that's also absolutely fine. Then we have Walt Disney. Also looking okay. Remember I spoke last week. It's really at its last. This is kind of the let's call it the Rubicon, which is a reference to a river in the US. Crossing the Rubicon is important because once you kind of cross that line, I don't think there is any way back. A lot of people are saying, look, this is a really good time to buy. Fundamentals, I wouldn't do that until I actually see a break in this downtrend on the monthly. I wouldn't do that until I see that break because until that time, the downtrend is still intact and therefore the implication is it could continue lower. And once it breaks through this, it can accelerate to the downside and drop further, and then it could be several years before it turns around. So it just technically doesn't make at all sense. There are no indicators at this time to show that this is a clever buying opportunity at all. All the indicators point to this being a better sell opportunity, but even then, it's not super strong. Okay, it's just a bad idea so far. Looking here at bonds, so 10-year T-note still selling, no love, no buyers at this time. It's trying to turn around. There could be a base here, but nothing yet. Eurobonds, also no love, just getting that yet. So a lot of the money is still sitting in equities and other things and not so much in bonds. And a lot of people are worried about that, and they're overcomplicating it. At the end of the day, bonds are attractive. At the end of the day, bonds are attractive. I know I'm repeating myself. I'm trying to emphasize this. Bonds are attractive when the stock market is not attractive. And right now, people are buying stocks and not buying bonds, which implies, ergo, that stocks are still attractive. There's still a hunger for it. There's still an optimism, even if it doesn't seem obvious. And that's end of. That's it. That's where a lot of the money is going. Okay. So, Bitcoin. Okay, Bitcoin's trying to find that base within the range. Remember, it is clearly within a range. This could be the bottom of the range. It could work its way up from there. Ethereum also trying to stay above that level there. That could well be the case. And on a monthly basis, it could potentially be producing higher lows, which could be leading to a breakout and a big move to the upside. So there could be a lag. Solana, just a bit of a mess, but same kind of thing. Daily downtrend, I admit. There's a little bit of a daily downtrend here, but look at that monthly. It's just going along the sides. Cardano, Binance, all pretty much the same. I'm not concerned about this at this time. And that is it from me. Ladies and gentlemen, I've already done a little bit of a summary a moment ago. This is very interesting to me. Sorry, I'm just pointing out because it's in front of me. Binance, that's a nice little double bottom there with bullish divergence. So that is a potential change indication in change in trend in a lot of these coming up. So some interesting stuff. Definitely worthwhile keeping an eye on. This week, I'm going to say that I think that there's a fair chance we could close higher. There's obviously a possibility we could close lower, and that introduces other stuff. But right now, there's a lot of clues that are hinting at the very least that the dollar might continue to be strong. So we might still see pressure from that dollar keeping everything down, but that only indicates at least one way for the week to start, not necessarily how it's going to finish. I'm very curious to see how it's going to finish. Keep an eye on that. All right, ladies and gents, I'll let you go. Please look after yourselves. Risk management, keep that mindset, trader mindset in place, in check, and let's see how the week turns out. Thank you.